morning, everybody. I got nice and camera ready, doing some parkour off the back of a pickup truck this weekend. Melanie and I come from the National High Fidelity Wraparound Program of the CSA that happened here in the state in 2009. That's where our roots are for learning this wraparound process. So we're just going to kind of do a little bit of an overview about wraparound, why we thought it would be helpful to the team here today and our teams moving forward in the work that we're about to undertake. Wraparound has really become a coined word since 2002. So I'm going to take us back a little bit further than that, to like the mid to early 80s. And it's interesting because that's around the time that I got involved with children, families, and individuals in human services and education. And so back in the 80s, the term wraparound was a fairly new concept that started coming about through people's new sense of collaboration to help families and children and individuals get what they need. And when I say that, it is in the context of they would have an individual that had a need. And so what the concept was to collaborate with all the people that were involved in that person's life, whether it was a state agency, whether it was a counselor, whether it was, any number of people that we consider as supports. And what they figured was, we'll have this individual and we will wrap all these services around them and they'll get better and they'll be fabulous. And so that was kind of the methodology of collaboration and wraparound. It was a literal term for wrapping someone in services. And I remember back in the DMH days, probably a few years prior to the kickoff of this high fidelity concept that I was introduced to, DMH very much used that as well. It was person-centered in that they would have the individual that was a consumer that was involved in their services, and they would just say, what do you think is going to make your life better that, you'll be able to achieve your goals? People would often say, well, and I worked primarily with kids, so, well, Billy's interested in karate. If he could try karate, maybe that would give him some, self-control skills, some social outlets, etc. But I don't have the money for that. So, the whole flex money comes in and they pay for Billy to do his karate classes, but then lo and behold, Billy's not going to karate class, still having the same behaviors, still going inpatient, mom's still struggling. Well, why didn't that work? The team reconvenes, and lo and behold, mom's car broke down. No money to help mom with her car. So then the money goes into the car. And so it's a matter of like putting out these little fires, and there was no real full wraparound concept about let's strategize from day one. Let's kind of problem solve and brainstorm as many things that possibly could come up that we're going to need to kind of consider when we're developing this care plan for this individual. That was back in the day. In 2002, a group of like-minded individuals got together. They had been doing some work up in Alaska with some very remote Native American tribes, the Inuits. And what they found is, as you can imagine, the resources they have up there are nil, basically. They have each other, and they have what is physically there in their surroundings to be able to support their needs. And they had a lot of social things going on, and they had a lot of other needs. So this team was using this, out-of-the-box thinking of high-fidelity wraparound. And what they did was they took their understanding from collaboration and, facilitating helping skills, and they really started fine-tuning the process that they were using up there in order to start pulling in some out-of-the-box thinking, some natural supports, some really kind of problem-solving with the consumer. And what they did was they came up with some really concrete tools to create this high-fidelity model that they then introduced nationally. There's been a lot of research that's been done. They continue to collect a lot of research nationally on high-fidelity wraparound. I can speak primarily right now from the children's perspective. When the state back when Governor Romney was here, a group of parents with special needs children and children with mental health needs sued the state because they felt like their children weren't getting their needs met. They weren't equitable to what somebody with a health condition would have. So the state was, scratching their head, how are we going to, kind of come up with a solution for this to happen? So they went to research, and what they found was this high fidelity wraparound model and they created the community service agencies of the CSAs. So that was back in 2009, and that's kind of been the remedy to really help parents and young adults to get their needs met in an evidence-based way, guidance using these tools. And so in doing that, I don't know, are we on the? No, first. Okay. This link here, when you go there, if you're the type of person that really has to have like spelled out for you like this, that, and the other thing, this has a lot of the resources that you'll need, but you're going to have to use your intuition to guide you on using it for the adult population. So a lot of the stuff that's on this website is written for youth and families, but we all know that youth and families, the families are the adults in the household, and oftentimes children need the support of their adults that are having the needs, and it's kind of trickles down generationally. So when you go to the website, it is a great resource. There's a bunch of tools there that you can use with consumers, that you can use as a professional, and we highly encourage you to take a look at that. So why wraparound? One of the things that it really cuts to the chase on is you're going to be using your skills, the interests and the needs of the consumer or the member, the enrollee, to really develop one plan. So as I said, back in the day when wraparound was taking the consumer and then everybody attaches their plan to this person and they wrap around. The concept of wraparound is you have all these collaborative people. You have your physician, and this is we're going to use somebody with asthma. They have an emergency plan for when the person's supposed to have action steps about using their maintenance inhalers, their emergency inhalers, their nebulizers. They're going to use their spirometer. They're going to, check those things. So Plan A exists with the doctor's office. Plan B exists with the outpatient therapist. They're working on anxiety, reducing symptomology. This is the treatment plan. And then they have maybe a work goal or something that they're working on professionally. Maybe they want to get into a training program. So the person has these 3 different places to go to, and they each are doing their thing. The consumer really needs the help to pull all those plans into making it work for them today, instead of like thinking about this, that, and the other thing. So your role in using wraparound is going to pull together all these plans, have one plan for one enrollee, and that way everybody knows what's going on with each other. As much as they have to, insurance-wise and probably state agency-wise have their individual plans, this plan that we'll be creating in our system is going to incorporate all of those pieces, so the consumer has just a one touch point place to be able to navigate through. Maybe, this week this is a priority, they're going to have to address that. Next week it's this. So these plans are going to really help to flow their care and help them feel empowered. As we know, many people say, well, you have to do it this way. That might not be working for them. So this is kind of thinking about, these are some ideas. Melanie's going to talk about meeting facilitation concepts. So we have some ideas and tools for you to use in this process to really make it member-driven. And as you can see, I'm using many names because of the different roles I've had. I'm trying to stick with learning the new enrollee and members. So I'm not sure which next is the principals. So these are the basics when you're working in wraparound. And a lot of them, as you can see by the names, are pretty standardized terms. So I'm not going to go through each one of them. But through making this a high fidelity model, these are the 10 principles that if you apply these with each enrollee that you're involved in and you educate them on the importance of these through your work, not as a teacher or whatnot, but you know, become steeped in what these are and be able to have conversations with them about these terms, because this is what's going to make their life goals come to life for them. And I think one thing I just want to touch base on that often in this work, a lot of times people focus on voice and choice. It's all voice and choice. Well, no, the member didn't like that, you know, it's voice and choice, so, you know, we're not going to do that. There are ways that you can use that to the member's advantage and to the team's advantage, because along with voice and choice comes accountability and responsibility. And through the wraparound that I've done, a lot of times things come back to the team facilitator, you know, pointing out this term, well, it's voice and choice. You know, say if a therapist has a particular, you know, goal that they're recommending for the member's care, and the member is like, no, I don't want to work on that, I want to work on this. That's okay, but really to help educate the consumer about voice and choice, but also too, we have to be accountable and responsible for the choices we're making in these meetings, because this is a Medicaid model, so there are some things that we have to work on. So being able to empower yourself as a facilitator to be able to help the consumer take some steps forward and hold themselves accountable and hold the team accountable as well. So those are some interesting pieces. And as you can see, all of those principles are all things that you've learned throughout your professional careers, I'm sure, in one role or another. They all make sense. I know I've sat through these trainings just this last week and a half. These are all things we've been talking about. So it's really just putting it into a different perspective in terms of the tools that you have. And then the thing that Melanie and I kind of got triggered about was team formation is so important. And when we were observing people last week, some people feel more comfortable about facilitating meetings and some people don't have that experience yet. And this is going to be a new experience for them. So we really felt like by providing a little bit of a nutshell of a training today on some of the basics to kind of break it down. And for those of you that do and have run meetings, you know, talk amongst the group and share your experiences and your skills, because what you might have brought to a meeting one time might be something that is brand new to somebody that's sitting with you. So as you're going through these trainings, please feel free to share your experiences, your skill sets, and your, you know, pearls of wisdom that you have from working with different members. And then take it into your workplace, into team meetings, into supervision and things like that, because we're all going to get better as we learn from each other. So there are some phases. The engagement we talked a lot about last week, about those scripts, those phone calls. Those are the things that are going to make it your consumer, your enrollee. How are you going to engage them? The scripts are, you know, nice to have when you're starting out. You're going to find it's working for you, it's not working for you. I engaged really well with this member when I approached it this way. So just be mindful that that script is really helpful. Melanie came from the MBHP model of doing that, and it was the smiling and dialing type of methodology. Didn't work so well when you always use the same script. So feel free, once you get your legs under you, to kind of play with that a little bit. What's working for one person might not work for someone else. And use your gut, use your instinct and your intuition about what's going to be important for that particular enrollee. The team formation, a big part of, like I said, all of these people have all these little handles on our enrollees. How are you going to make their involvement important to the member and important to them? What are they going to get out of it? So try to use that as well in terms of developing the team and educating them. You know, send them a link to the national wraparound. Like, this is kind of what we're trying to do. We're thinking out of the box to really help this member to kind of come into a new point in their development. And then the implementation is once the team is there, you've done the assessment, you've done the member person-centered treatment plan, and now the plan is moving along. So that's basically that in a nutshell. One of the pieces that's really important to talk about from day one, we have transition and graduation at the end, but it's really important to talk about that from the first engagement. You know, when we work together, we're going to identify your goals. We want to see what you want to be doing so that when we're done, you'll feel like you have some better satisfaction in your life. You'll feel, you know, more competent in your roles as a employee, as a husband, as a partner, as a dad, you know, whatever it's going to be. It's all about them, and what a celebration it is when somebody can, you know, walk away. They might walk away for a year from this program after you're done your work with them, and then all of a sudden there's another life crisis that happens and they're back on the membership list. You know, that's okay. People learn and develop in different ways. Different crises impact people in different ways, but through this process, the ultimate goal is to teach them how to do their own care, and that's what wraparound is about. There's specific skills that you can use, and when you go to the website, I manage the family partner division, which is kind of like peer recovery specialist in the child model. And there's 97 specific observable behaviors that I would be able to see in my staff if I went to shadow them. I'd be like, oh, this is a family in the implementation phase because I see them doing this with this family. You know, when the plans are done, and I go to do a visit, I'm like, oh, they must have just had a care plan because I see that she's debriefing the meeting, asking about the satisfaction in the meeting, you know, how did it go, what was your impressions? So there are specific skill sets that you can see on there. So again, if you're a novice and new to this is a great support for you to be able to learn some different things using this type of model. It is evidence-based, so if you apply it the way that, you know, it's intended here, but even if you're not going to use everything here and you just are stuck with a particular enrollee or member, take a peek. Maybe there's a different skill that you might want to try with them in one of these steps here. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Melanie, and she's going to move to the engagement and the team formation as well as the meeting skills.
Thank you. So you're probably wondering, okay, wraparound, that's great. Like, what's the point, right? So really, I think the purpose or our hope is that you will take these principles, the 10 principles of wraparound, and the 4 phases that Barbara just discussed, and really implement it when you're forming your teams, when you're facilitating your team meetings, and we're hoping that it will be beneficial principles to know and always keep in the back of your mind. So with engagement and team formation, so we kind of took those 2 phases and made them into one. You have these skills, you know these 10 principles. Your plan now is to kind of prepare for the meeting, right? So first, you're meeting with the member, right? This is a person-centered comprehensive assessment. Really, it's all about the enrollee. I keep calling it member. Sorry, I've got like my MBHP hat on. Stop calling it member. You're going to meet with, oh, what happened?
Oh. I don't want to burn a hole in the back of my computer.
No, you don't. So you want to explain the process. You know, you want to talk about this is what's going to happen. This is the point of the program. You know, we're going to be meeting with you. We're going to be developing a team of people that you choose to have on this team to have this meeting, go over goals, go over what's going well, what's not going well, and develop a plan that really works for the enrollee. You want to sit with the member and develop an invitation list. Okay, who are the people in your life that you want to attend this meeting, that you want to be part of this care plan? You know, is it it needs to be your PCP. So let's invite your PCP office or someone from your PCP office. Do you have a therapist? Do you have a CSP worker? You know, but you also want to remember, going back to the 10 principles, you don't want it to be just provider focused. You don't want to just have, you know, the therapist and the doctor and all these folks who are, you know, insurance-based experts, right? You want to have natural supports there, which is part of one of the other principles. You know, having, you know, my neighbor is really great, and when I'm feeling stressed out, we can hang out and talk for hours. That's great. Let's see if your neighbor can come to this meeting. You know, my mom, we have a terrible relationship. She's not someone I want at this meeting. Fine, we won't invite your mother. So So really kind of sitting down, taking the time before you have that meeting and develop the invitation list is super important. Making sure you're obtaining releases of information. Obviously, we can't talk to anyone without a release of information. That includes the natural supports. You know, you might think when you're doing you're going out and doing your comprehensive assessment, like, oh, yep, I got a release of information for everyone. Oh, but I forgot the neighbor and the person from the church and, you know, siblings and children. So make sure you're getting and obtain a release of information for everyone. You want to discuss scheduling details, so that's stuff like date, time, location. So figuring that stuff all in advance with the members is important, because again, it needs to be a date and a time above all else that works for the enrollee. And then develop an agenda. Okay, so this is, what are we going to talk about at this meeting? What's the purpose? You know, when you're calling and inviting people to the meeting, what are you going to tell them? So we're going to meet at, you know, Joe's house for an hour on Monday at 3 o'clock. Okay, then what? You know, so really having that agenda developed is helpful, so that when you are calling folks to tell them about the meeting and inviting them to the meeting, you have a purpose and you have an agenda already in place. Like, this is what we're going to be talking about. So once that's all done, you're going to go, you know, back to your car, to the office, to wherever it may be, and you're going to start outreaching the members. So you're going to start with, you know, the primary care doctor's office, the therapist, whomever it is that they're inviting, and let them know, you know, explain the process, identify the roles, say, hey, you know, I'm Melanie from the CCN, and I'm a care coordinator, and I'm working with Joe, and this is something we're doing, and really kind of going over the agenda. Say, we're having this meeting on Monday at 3 o'clock. This time really works for Joe. I really hope you can work around your schedule to make it there. You know, if Joe says, you know, Monday at 3 o'clock works for me, but I really, really want my primary care doctor there, so whatever time works for the primary care doctor. So then you call the primary care doctor first, and you say, hey, you know, Joe says Mondays at 3 really work for him. If that doesn't work for you, what is a day and time that works for you, so I can go back to Joe and try to coordinate that to make sure that that works for him. Again, you want to make sure that you're sending the CCN brochure along with the release of information to everyone on the team. Because, you know, you can call, I remember when the CSA started, when was it, 2009. And so you have this whole new program, CBHI, Children's Behavioral Health Initiative, you know, the Community Service Agency, you had the Intensive Care Coordinator, you had all these roles. And I remember calling everyone and telling them about this program, like, this is a wonderful program and this is what we do. And everyone's looking at you like, huh? You want to do what? You want to sit around at a meeting with the family and talk about their strengths and their goals and what they want? But, you know, I'm the therapist who's been working with them for 20 years. I know best. So really explaining this model was super, super challenging. So I think if you have a call and a discussion with everyone on the team beforehand, it's going to make that meeting and facilitating that meeting so much easier, because people will know the purpose, why they're there, and what this is all about. Versus you're going to get a bunch of people around a table to talk about goals, and everyone is going to have an opinion, and everyone's going to have their own agenda, and it's going to be a disaster. So you can review the agenda with them, send it along if they want a copy, you know, shoot them an email with the agenda. And then one very important principle of wraparound, and I think, you know, I believe it's listed as number 1 under the 10 principles, is strengths-based. You know, you really want to focus on positives. Focusing on negatives is very easy. You know, it's easy to say, like, well, this person needs to do this, and we do it to ourselves too. You know, like, I need to do this more, and it's very difficult to pick out strengths. You know, so it's super important to tell the team members, come prepared with strengths. We don't want to forget about the needs. That's the whole point, right? The whole point is to develop goals and work on needs. But it's important to always start a meeting with strengths, like, what's going well? You know what? Joe's been sober for 2 weeks. That's awesome. Like, 2 weeks without picking up a drink or using, or little things like that are so important. So you're not focusing on, like, he keeps relapsing every, like, month. Like, that's not helpful. So, you know, he's sober, so what's working? What's helping him stay sober these 2 weeks? So really focusing on those strengths. Woohoo, meeting day, we're there, facilitation, right? So all this work needs to go in before you have the meeting, because facilitating meetings can be very, very challenging. You have lots of people at the table, lots of opinion, everyone's an expert, so it really is a skill, and I think that it's a skill that you continue to develop them the more you do them. I've been facilitating meetings for over 10 years, and every meeting is different, and every meeting you encounter a different personality and a different, so it really is, it's a skill that you'll learn as you do them. So you get there, you pass out the agendas, you do introductions. Purpose, again, super important to make sure you're discussing a purpose. Nobody wants to waste their time. No one wants to sit at a meeting for an hour not knowing what they're doing there. You get people rolling their eyes, you get, it's important to have a purpose. Ground rules, so this was a huge part of also wraparound and making sure that it stays to be enrollee choice is what we're calling it, instead of family voice and choice, which is what the wraparound uses. Enrollee choice. So ground rules, super important. Again, you're going to have folks who are going to want to hijack your meeting. It's like, yes, I've got all these people around the table. Now I can talk to them about what I want to talk about in my agenda, because I've been trying to call the PCP for a year and they haven't called me back. Now's my chance to steal this PCP and start talking to them. No, not happening. This is Joe's meeting. We're not hijacking Joe's meeting. So going over those ground rules right at the beginning, One thing that was helpful, and I just remembered this, we used to do at the CSA is we had these sticky, huge Post-it things that you could write on. So you could write the ground rules. The other thing you could do with that is develop a parking lot. So you want to be able to listen to people. People are taking their time coming to your meeting, whether it be an hour, half hour, whatever, however long your meeting is. You want to make sure that you're listening to them, but at the same time, you have an agenda. You have things that you need to do, right? You have a care plan or a treatment plan that you need to develop. So have a parking lot. If the therapist says, well, I've been working with them for a few years now, and you know what, therapist, that's great. Let's put this in the parking lot, and maybe we can talk about it at the next meeting or at the end of the meeting if we have time. So that way you're listening, and you're not just ignoring this therapist, again, because you're thankful they're there. They're taking time out of their day to be there at your meeting. However, you have an agenda you need to do, and you have limited time. So having a parking lot is super helpful. The other thing that you do is brainstorming. So during the meeting, again, lots of people are going to have lots of ideas. If you're trying to figure out, okay, so Joe's goal is really to go to therapy once a week. So you have the whole team brainstorm. How can we get Joe to therapy once a week? Again, this is where it comes in super handy to have this piece of paper where you can kind of jot down everyone's idea and then revisit that. Like, okay, Joe, what do you like best out of these ideas? What works most for you? Is it having your neighbor take you? Is it having a PT1? Is it having me call you the morning of to remind you? So brainstorming, jotting it down, having these notes so that you can review is also super helpful during your facilitation.
I think another method, if you don't have the big sticky paper, which is ultra expensive, is you can pass out a piece of paper to everybody at the beginning of the meeting, and you can have parking lot ideas, things that people want to remember to tell you or discuss at a future meeting, and then you can have a brainstorm list where people can then write down any ideas that might pop up even while the facilitation is going on, and at the end of the meeting, you as the facilitator collect all of that, and then you have it all. So there's different ways. Some people use Post-it notes. I mean, whatever is going to be a good tool for you and for the member as well. So.
Identify a note taker. Sometimes there's a lot going on, so you want to make sure that notes are taken. I've got a little bit of control issues. I always like to be the note taker because I need to go back and write up stuff, right? I need to go back and write up a plan, so I want to make sure that nothing is missed. But if you feel comfortable with having someone else on the team taking notes so that you're more focused on facilitating the meeting, go ahead and assign someone to be the note taker. Same thing with the timekeeper. You're chatting, you're running a meeting. You don't want to keep looking at your clock like, oh, we only have another 45 minutes. So having a timekeeper, just letting them know, you want to be aware of everyone's time, that the meeting was scheduled from 3 to 4. You really want to be done by 4 o'clock because you don't want people sitting there more than the time that you told them it was going to be. That's super important. Time is valuable for everyone. And then, as I mentioned before, use active listening skills. Making sure that in the meeting you're listening to everyone that's speaking and giving everyone a time to speak. You have your agenda, utilize the parking lot so that you're utilizing your active listening skills. we're still facilitating, we're still in this meeting. Person-centered. So, right, the whole point of this is that it's person-centered. Strengths-based, voice and choice, all goes back to person-centered. So you're determining these person-centered goals. Brainstorming, we talked a little bit about. So brainstorming, not only ideas, okay, so now tasks. Who, what, where, when, how are we going to do this? So we have these wonderful goals. How are we going to make them happen? So that's important when you're talking about that. So, you know, okay, so Joe's going to go to therapy Tuesday at 11 o'clock. How are you going to get there? You know, who's going to bring you? Who's going to remind you? You're always forgetting. Do you have a calendar? You know, so really bringing it down to the who, what, where, when. How do we make this happen? And at the end of the meeting, you always want to review it, you know, when you're wrapping up. So are there any questions about, you know, before we end the meeting, summarize the meeting? Like, so this is the plan, these are the goals, these are the tasks, and then develop a check-in, a plan for following up. So, you know, okay, the neighbor is going to bring Joe to his appointment. So how are we going to make sure that that even happens? So always have a plan for checking in, you know, scheduling the next meeting. It's always good. I always feel that when you're trying to schedule a next meeting, that you do it when everybody's in the room, because everyone can pull out their calendars. You don't have to be calling people, leaving voicemails, sending emails. You got everyone in the room. Schedule the next meeting. You know, let's meet again in 6 months to see how this is going. 6 months sounds really far out, but people's schedules book up pretty early, let me tell you. So schedule the next meeting right there when you have everyone in the room. And then celebrate and thank people for their participation. So you want to, you know, thanks everyone for coming out. This is a great meeting. Joe, you're doing great on your 2 weeks of sobriety. This is awesome. So always celebrate and try to be strengths-based, because we can all pick out all the negatives. That's easy. Being strengths-based and picking out positives is the hard part. And then implementation. So your meeting is done, right? What next? So making sure you're checking in with the member. You know, was it your task to make sure and remind the member of his, member, I keep saying member and I wrote it on the thing, enrollee. I gotta change that. So, and then following up with the team members. So, you know, calling the therapist, hey, how did Joe's appointment go? You know, did he come to his appointment? How was that? Refine the plan as needed. Joe didn't go to his appointment. All right, let's call Joe. What happened, Joe? Well, you know, Tuesdays at 11 actually don't work for my schedule. Something came up. Okay, well, let's find another day of the week that does work. So, you know, this isn't set in stone, these plans. They're ever changing. You can always refine the goals with the member, with the enrollees. Track successes. I went to my appointment. My appointment was wonderful. Yes, awesome. Celebrate that, you know. Track any other identified needs of yours. You know, my neighbor actually can't bring me. You know, she said she could, but turns out gas is really expensive. She's been having some car issues. All right, well then let's set up a PT1. That might work better. So, you know, and then you're working on preparing for the next meeting. And be sure, so, you know, we talked about doing that parking lot. So be sure to bring those parking lot ideas to the next meeting, so folks know you really were listening. Like, you know, so the next meeting 6 months from now, 7 months from now, like, oh, you know, the therapist brought this up last time. Is this something we want to talk about this time? Because that's important. Because there's no use in having this huge parking lot and then forgetting about what was even mentioned.
And then the other piece about that is if you do need to refine the plan, you can say to Joe, well, remember that parking lot? Let me pull out those while we're on the phone, and we'll go through those to see if maybe one of those might be something we could use now while we're, you know, between meetings.
And then just remember, Barbara and I always like this, we're super into, you know, feel good stuff. Social workers in us. Be kind to yourself, you know, like, be yourself, accept yourself. There's, you know, there's a whole little mantra up here, but facilitating meetings are hard, you know, and if you've never done them before, it's even that much harder. So just, it's fine, you know, the whole point is to really engage. So engage with the team members, engage with the enrollee, you know, build that trust and that rapport with them, and everything else will come into place. Any questions on any of that? I know it's kind of like a lot of information in a short amount of time. Now everyone out ready to go facilitate a meeting? Folks have experience facilitating meetings. I probably should have started with that actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Folks facilitate. I feel like it's a big role of what we all do, you know, in human services and social work. Everyone always wants to come together and facilitate.
Another thing, thinking about this whole program here, one of the things just to give you an extra tool when you're working with a member, we know that our enrollees in our membership have diverse backgrounds, skills, intellectual capacities. And I have a lot of experience working with people that don't read and have a hard time with that, like comprehension, the DDS population. So one of the things that I just want to kind of throw out there, and I'm going to have you use your imagination just to picture this. So part of what I've done with families is help them to create a visual of this plan process and help them understand what it's about. So if you imagine the ground is the plan. So that's the dirt, the rocks, whatever. That's what's holding, and you picture the stem coming up, those are the social supports that are going to help support that plan. The member's needs are the center of the flower, and then all the petals on the outside are things that the member either needs to learn for skills that they already possess as a strength, their other social supports, and then the sun is shining down on all of that, and that is self-efficacy, and ideally that's what we want to teach. Now we know that, women or some men might prefer the garden approach. Other people, I like the analogies of cars and roads. So I've worked with a number of people that wouldn't be into the gardening thing. So to kind of come up with another concept is you picture a road, and that is the plan that you're on. The car is how you're going to get there and the tools that are needed. And then you're in the car with the member, and first of all, you're driving the car, the member's in the passenger side, and maybe there's some other people in the car, the therapist, the doctor, etc. You're all driving down the road, and there's these little houses and obstacles that you kind of have to navigate like a video game. So what are the tools that they're going to have to use to kind of navigate that? What are some of the maintenance things that the car is going to need in order to continue on in this journey to accomplish the plan? So you get to a certain point, you get out, the member's in the driver's seat, but you're all still in the car, you move to the passenger seat and you're coaching and you're driving along with them, helping them navigate all of these things along the road. And then one day, this person steps out of the car, they travel on, this person steps out of the car, and then at the end, the member is driving the car. And they're able to navigate this plan and this road on their own. So there's different ways to kind of think about that. Like this is a plan where we're here for a big engine overhaul, but let's see if we can come up with a plan that you're going to be able to then maintain your car. Who's going to do your oil changes? Who's going to check your pressure in your tires? Who's going to do your 100,000-mile checkup? Those are the type of things to kind of think out of the box when you're describing this to members. Because those are the things that matter to them. Those are touch points, real life things that they can then wrap their head on. If you go to somebody's house and the house is full of dolphin pictures, use that. Okay, so the ocean is the plan, and we're going to be the dolphins, and where we're going to find our food, and those are the type of things that people that have barriers for learning and achieving, those are the things that you meet them where they're at, and you use the things that they're interested in, versus all this heavy paperwork and these concepts. So if anything you take from today, just realize all of this stuff matters, but ultimately you need to individualize it for your own skills style as well as the individual's skills, styles, interests, needs. So